Hello, my name is Michael Martinez, and I am going to be discussing Natives, Africans, and Latinos in America, the life and history. So, it begins with the history of Native Americans. By the time European adventurers arrived in the 15th century AD, scholars estimate that more than 50 million Native people were living in the Americas. Native Americans thrived on living off the land in America. There were many different tribes of Indians who occupied America, and major cultures included the Adena, Coal Creek, Hohokam, Puebloan, Mississippian, and Iroquois Indians. European contact with Native Americans. When European invasions of the Americas began with Columbus's voyages to the New World in 1492, the Europeans brought diseases with them, including smallpox and measles. These unfamiliar diseases spread quickly among Native Americans, and they wiped out the populations of many native cities. The Europeans started colonizing the Americas in order to cultivate new farmlands and create new jobs for the growing populations of Europeans. They often fought Native American tribal nations for the land. Very interesting. This is European contact continued. Several factors gave the Europeans an advantage in the conflicts and battles of the land. First, they had some immunities to their own diseases and were not as devastated by them as Native Americans were. Second, the Europeans had horses and guns, which overpowered the Native Americans, hand weapons, and arrows in battle. Thirdly, European settlements in the Americas grew at such a rate that European descendants eventually outnumbered the native people. So they pretty much just took over because they overpopulated and conquered the native people. Treatment of Native Americans by the European settlers, it varied from the Spanish, the British, and the French. The Spanish treatment of the Native Americans was poor. Spanish explorers considered the natives inferior, as did the British, which I'll get to here in a second. Consequently, they forcibly converted natives to Christianity, confined them to slavery, and murdered them. Those who resisted were punished by a system called encomienda, in which natives were assigned to settlers through land grants as part of a deal. That was Spanish. Next one. Treatment of natives continued. This is the British side of things. The British tried to enslave Native Americans when they came to the New World, as well as convert them to Christianity. This is similar to the treatment that they received from the Spaniards. The British didn't come to the New World in 1607 when they established their Jamestown, Virginia colony nearly 100 years after the Spaniards first came to the country. Unlike the Spanish settlers, the British did not carry as many of the diseases that proved fatal to the Native Americans. The British tried to buy land from the Native Americans, but since they didn't believe in ownership of land, it led to conflict and strained their relationships. The French were the third group that came over to the Americas and ran into the natives. And their treatment was a little bit different than the British and the Spaniards. When French explorers and fur trappers came to the New World, they experienced a largely peaceful, friendly, and conflict-free relationship with the Native Americans living in the region. Historians attribute this peaceful relationship to the ongoing fur trade between the two groups, as well as the fact that French were respectful of the land occupied by the Native Americans. The relationship between the two groups became closer when the French established their permanent North American settlement at Quebec in 1608. The Native Americans living in the area and the French settlers continued to trade with each other, and intermarriage was common between the two groups. So, they got along. Current lives of Native Americans is where I'm going to end this little presentation. Currently remaining Native American areas of population density lie within federally designated reservations. Alaska and Hawaii are the only two states in the U.S. that have not pursued a policy with Native Americans that sought to restrict them to the confines of reservations. So basically, the Indians, Native Americans are being put on reservations, and that's where they have been put to stay, basically abiding by their own laws and their own government. Today, much of the native culture has been lost. Language, the way they dress, the way they talk, it's all basically been assimilated because of the conquering of their land. So, the U.S. policy of Indian removal fragmented whole tribes and nations, placing them in land, which I was talking about a second ago, with little agriculture value, which they were not accustomed to. So the Indians, Native Americans, were accustomed to growing crops and living off the land, and basically they were sent on lands where that wasn't as available for them or attainable, considering the land was not of good quality. Most Native Americans live on reservations now. However, they are naturalized citizens and are provided with the same constitutional rights as any other citizen. So they've been put on these reservations, they have the same rights, but they're still on these reservations, basically isolated in their own populations. That's where I'm going to stop my presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much.